for coming. This piece is called Heart Center, and away we go. She was dying in a closet. Dina Alvarado had AIDS and was spending her last moments on earth in a large closet, about 6 by 8, adjacent to a large room that served as a bedroom for recovering drug addicts. She was ill and needed a place to die. The place was a well-known recovery house for LGBT people. Banner Place had probably seen its shares of AIDS deaths or overdoses. They offered to take her in. Dina was a trans woman who had developed a reputation for helping others. In our nonprofit circles, she was stellar. She was particularly known for helping other HIV-positive trans women. She was a case manager who helped women find food, shelter, or medical services. It was devastating to hear that she was in the late stages of AIDS. This was not in the 1980s or 1990s. This was 2010, when AIDS was no longer a disease, but considered a chronic one. No one in the United States was supposed to die of AIDS anymore. When I'd met her 12 years before, she was radiantly beautiful. She was small-boned with dark hair and eyes. She was the kind of trans woman who could have flown stealth or passed as biologically female. Passing is something that is innate in many marginalized communities. The art of being invisible is a form of survival. I tried to pass as straight. It kept me safer. I embrace being gay, but appearing straight acting can be a lifesaver. I still tried to pass as American. I have this Filipino face and have been in the United States for over 50 years. In a crowd, I'll speak first, showing anyone around how good my English is, as if to say, see, I'm an American too. I'd known several trans women who chose to pass. Once they transitioned, they disappeared, gratefully leading an anonymous life. A few trans friends have said to me, don't tell anyone I'm trans. My neighbors don't know. The secret was always safe with me. The secret meant a life free from harassment, danger. This was not Dina Alvarado. Letting the world know she was transgender was her act of survival, a full embrace of herself. I met her because she competed in a pageant, a very special pageant. Unlike other pageants where beauty and dresses took center stage, this pageant emphasized service to the community and being an inspiration to other trans women, particularly youth. This was a population prone to suicide, and since no one would hire them, prostitution was a survival job. Violence was a part of their daily existence. Dina won the pageant, looking like a young Sophia Loren. She was strong, glowing, fierce. I was the press person for the pageant. I did media trainings for the candidates. A big prize for winning was the cover of an LGBTQ magazine and appearances at public events. She had to be presentable, media savvy, and personable. She had to be, well, a pageant queen. Dina was all of this. That's why it was devastating seeing her emaciated and unable to speak. By that time, I'd been doing AIDS work for 20 years. I'd seen some of the most vibrant people reduced to mere shadows of themselves. Every time I think I could handle seeing this, every time I was wrong. It's always hard, always excruciatingly sad. What made it difficult was that the people dying were so incredibly young. I hated that Dina was dying in a closet, but was also quite surprised. Her room was filled with at least a dozen Buddhas of various sizes. A large Buddha was tattooed onto her torso. I have no idea she'd been studying Buddhism. This is not surprising. Religion isn't talked much about in queer communities. In a Pew Research poll, more than 50% of LGBT people didn't identify with a religion. In the general population, that number is only 20%. I was raised Catholic and sang in the church choir. There are a lot of gay men in choir. I looked out from the choir loft and saw a huge image of Jesus, and I knew he loved me. The men below, not so much. How many of us gay men sang our hearts out for God, only to be vilified at the pulpit? Half of LGBT people didn't turn away from God, they were forced away. I was this person. One of the last hopes for the church disappeared when I heard a priest I knew refused last rites to a man who was dying of AIDS. Last rites is a crucial death ritual in the Catholic Church. They are the last prayers given shortly before death. I couldn't believe this was denied. I remember in deep quiet and in my despair, kneeling before God, I asked what to do. I couldn't be part of an institution that didn't seem to want me. I felt like a battered lover begging for my spouse to forgive me. On my knees, I felt God say, there are other ways to find me. Permission. I heard permission. Thus, my journey to explore another way of believing came to be. By the time I saw Dina again, I'd been practicing a Buddhist. I was a practicing Buddhist for some years, finding spiritual fulfillment there in a way I hadn't before. I started to pursue Buddhism because they had no scriptural evidence to hate gay people. Part of my training in the Dharma or Buddhist teachings was attending a training on Buddhist death rituals. I felt compelled to guide Dina through a visualization I was taught. See the Buddha in front of you, I whispered to Dina. He's shimmering and bright, taking the form of a Buddha of limitless light. Dina's eyes were nearly closed. I didn't know if she could hear me. Focus on Buddha's heart. See yourself traveling towards Buddha's heart. Aim for it. If you've meditated, now is a good time to use it. Just concentrate on Buddha's heart center. When you aim for Buddha's heart, don't be distracted by other voices. People might be calling you back. You might hear them crying for you to return, or you might feel the pull of pets if you have them. You might hear them bark or whimper. Don't listen. Just keep moving forward. This ritual was about moving on, letting go. Impermanence is a Buddhist concept drilled into me. God is change, wrote Octavia Butler in Parable of the Sower, one of my favorite novels. Suffering is caused when we refuse to let go, refuse to accept change. Just move, Dina. Go. Do you understand? Gotcha, she said, her eyes widening. She appeared fully awake. This surprised me. She was listening. Good, I said. Focus on Buddha's heart. Aim for it. She died 2 days later. When her memorial was held, the priest kept referring to Dina as he. The room was filled with LGBT activists in a hall in West Hollywood. For most of us, we were used to calling out people who didn't use a proper pronoun, but the room was filled with Dina's family. No one wanted to disrupt the memorial to correct the priest. Frankly, I think we were also tired. I knew many in the room who had been doing AIDS work for a long time. We knew grief, and we were tired. When my father died, I arranged the funeral. Grief from losing a parent was unbearable. It also pushed me in the right direction. My father was not a religious man, but he was dying, and he wanted to be closer to God. He fell back into his Catholicism, not out of passion, but familiarity. I didn't want that for myself. Upon my death, I wanted to feel fully invested. In the back of my mind, I knew that would be Buddhism. I worked in the Asian community for a while. I called myself a professional Asian. Unlike so many other fellow Buddhist converts, most of whom were not Asian and thought they floundered finding a Buddhist community to connect with, I found them easily in places where I worked and played. I felt more comfortable in a Buddhist temple where my Asian face was welcomed. I did not feel that way in the churches I grew up in, with priests who seemed to prefer the white parishioners than treated the Filipinos sort of like pets. What bothered me was there were Filipinos who didn't mind that. Growing up, I'd been called pretty. Girls often asked if I wore eyeliner because my lashes were so dark, my lips were full, and more than a few people had said I'd make an attractive woman. I took it as both a compliment and an insult. Some of my favorite male idols were pretty, even beautiful. From 1950s matinee idol Montgomery Clift to model Corey Baptiste, these men would not be considered rugged or brawny. They were mostly elegant, sophisticated types, the kind of man I'd want to be. However, as an Asian man, I knew of the feminization of Asian men is rooted in colonial bigotry. The idea of an Asian man being considered pretty can be considered an insult in certain circles. I was left with a conundrum. I was a man who liked being called pretty, but hated being seen as a pretty Asian man. Now that I'm older, this doesn't bother me as much, perhaps because I'm also less pretty. My ex Jennifer and I agreed to have lunch. We hadn't seen each other in a while. One of the reasons we broke up was because she had an amazing opportunity to work in San Francisco, a city she dreamed of living for a long time. Los Angeles is my home and couldn't see myself leaving it. Jennifer looked great. Her hair was upswept into a bun. She seemed happy with her new life in the Bay Area. She got her law degree from Harvard, but never practiced. She made her career writing about law as a journalist. She and I met in a running group, even trained for a marathon together. When we met, she was a man. We don't use her dead name. Still, I wonder what would have happened if she had remained a man and not transitioned to female. We broke up, yes, because she moved to San Francisco, but because she wanted to be what she needed to be, a woman. When we were together, she liked to dress up as a woman, but gay men did that. When she started to come out as transgender, I tried to be supportive. However, transitioning can be tough. She went on hormones, which influenced her emotions. Before, when we'd get into a fight, we'd both yell at each other, maybe throw things. Now she was a woman. When we get into a fight, I'd yell and she'd cry. Being in a relationship with a woman would make us a heterosexual couple, something this gay man, who worked very hard to accept his gayness, was not willing to participate in. I've told this story to some transgender friends who were disappointed in me. Wasn't the person I was in a relationship with the same person as when she transitioned? Wasn't she even better now that she was truly herself? Was a cock that important to me? I felt like I had let down my ideals. It's the inside that matters, a phrase that had been drilled into me since childhood. In theory, that sounds pleasant, but the outside matters a little, maybe even a lot. I am not romantically attracted to a woman's body. In Buddhism, there are tales of gender bending all the time. Kuan Yin in Mahayana Buddhism is a woman who used to be a man. Kuan Yin is a major queer symbol for this very reason. She embodies the very essence of compassion. When Dina was dying in that closet, with Buddha statues in her room and Buddha tattooed to her torso, I wondered if she knew this. She and others like her are a part of Buddhist history. Dina transitioned to womanhood, then committed acts of kindness, compassion. By meeting Dina, I had met Kuan Yin. Thank you.